get started.
Hello, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the annual patient meeting of the Desmoid Tumor Research Foundation. This year, again, we're going virtual and we will have 2 webinars. This first webinar will last a little more than 90 minutes, and we have 4 topics. And I'll introduce each presenter before each presentation. It's so exciting that we have more than 275 people registered from 21 countries. This includes an audience of patients, caregivers, and medical professionals. We always invite our medical professionals to attend and appreciate you being here. We really appreciate the virtual platform that allows us to be together. I was so touched last night at our networking meeting where about 60 patients and care partners joined us for informal connections via this networking event. And I'm just always so touched because we've been doing this for 16 years at DTRF, and we just love connecting with patients, and this annual meeting is so important to us to hear your stories and to know that what we're doing is reaching patients and the people who work with them. I'd like to introduce our DTRF team who is here. They're actually behind the scenes, but we have Lynn Hernandez, who is our great tech person who helps make the meeting work. We have Dr. Manish Kumar, who is our new research director, who will be monitoring question and answer and timing, and Marlene Portnoy, co-founder and executive director of DTRF. We thank our sponsor for our patient meeting, SpringWorks Therapeutics, who are also in attendance here, and Ayala Pharmaceuticals. And thanks to the presenters who are giving time on a precious Saturday to be here with us when we're most available to hear their presentations. So before we start, please, we invite you to follow us on Facebook and on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is DTR Foundation at Instagram and Twitter. So, and also please sign up for our newsletter at dtrf.org. We have a patient newsletter. We have a separate physician newsletter, and really appreciate you keeping in touch through that. So this is how the meeting will work. There are 2 streams open. You can click on chat and talk with anyone in the general attendee group. But if you have a question for a presenter, you must go to the Q&A stream. Dr. Kumar will be monitoring the Q&A stream. After we have a pre-recorded presentation, we're going to open the time for live questioning, and your questions will be fed through the Q&A. And also recordings of the webinar will be made available after this on our website. We won't be able to get to everyone's question. It will be impossible, unfortunately. But if one of your questions, either pre-submitted or typed in today, is not answered, our presenters have generously offered to answer the questions in writing, and we will email the answers out to people who are in attendance. Okay, so we're hoping to meet all of your needs and questions here. So first, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Dr. Bernd Kasper. He's a member of the DTRF Medical Advisory Board. He is from the Mannheim University Medical Center in Germany. Our board is truly international, like all of you are here. And he's done a great pre-recorded presentation giving an overview of medical desmoid tumor treatments. We'll start with the video, and then we'll open it live to questions from Dr. Kasper.
Okay, give me 1 second.
It is indeed my pleasure and honor to speak again
at the annual patient meeting of the Desmoid Tumor Research Foundation. And I would like to talk about challenges in exploiting medical therapies for desmoid tumors. And I would like to give my talk on behalf of the Desmoid Tumor Working Group. As you all know, we are talking about a monoclonal fibroblastic proliferation, which is characterized by a variable and often unpredictable clinical cause. The incidence of desmoid tumors is around 5 to 6 cases per 1 million of the population per annum. And as you all know, a couple of years ago, we have started a consensus initiative due to the fact that there was no level 1 or 2 evidence for the treatment approach for desmoid tumors available, and there were only very few prospectively conducted studies and meta-analysis. So our first roundtable meeting dates back to May 2014, where patients and patient advocates from Sarcoma Patients Euronet and medical experts from the ERTC soft tissue and bone sarcoma group met in Frankfurt, Germany. And we came up with the first position paper on the management of sporadic desmoid type fibromatosis, which was published in the European Journal of Cancer. This was updated 2 years later in the Annals of Oncology in 2017, and in 2018 the Desmoid Tumor Working Group went global with a meeting in June 2018 in Milan. And these are the topics which we covered during that meeting. Of course, we talked about pathology and molecular genetics, about indications for an active treatment, including radiotherapy. We talked about the available medical therapies in different indications, the assessment of treatment effects, pain, quality of life, fertility and pregnancy. And we also dedicated a chapter of this meeting and of this publication to endpoints, study designs, and regulatory requirements for desmoid tumors. And I would like to focus now on the systemic treatment landscape for desmoid tumors. Here you can see the different available systemic treatment options: anti-hormonal therapies, chemotherapies, targeted therapies, which means the tyrosine kinase inhibitors, and most recently gamma-secretase inhibitor therapy. Starting with the anti-hormonal therapies, only case reports and small series are available here. The reported response rates vary up to 50%. However, there is no clear rationale available and a very low evidence. Nevertheless, anti-hormonal therapies are still often used in Europe due to the easy availability, the low costs, and the rather few side effects. But we did not give a general recommendation for the use of anti-hormonal therapies. Here you can see an old overview of case reports and small series evaluating this treatment strategy. The first and only prospective study evaluating the combination of tamoxifen plus solindac comes from the Children Oncology Group, 59 patients who have been treated with this combination of tamoxifen and solindac. However, only 10 patients completed the therapy without progressive disease or withdrawal. The overall response rate was 8%, and the 2 years progression-free survival rate was 36%, which is, by the way, the same as the placebo arm in the sorafenib study. So this is the first and only prospective study evaluating this combination with rather low activity in terms of overall survival, overall response, and PFS rates. Regarding chemotherapy, The indication for chemotherapy are non-resectable, rapidly growing and/or symptomatic or even life-threatening desmoid tumors, and they should preferably be treated with chemotherapy. The only prospective phase 2 study evaluating the combination of methotrexate plus vinblastine again comes from the pediatric population, 28 patients who have been treated with this treatment combination for up to 1 year. Overall response rate 19%, which is the same as the placebo arm in the sorafenib study, and 8 patients remain free of progression at a median of 43 months from study entry. So this combination of methotrexate and vinblastine demonstrated progression arrest in about 1/3 of the children, and it is definitely the chemotherapy regimen of choice in the pediatric patient population. Here you can see selected chemotherapy regimens which have been put together here in a publication in The Oncologist. However, no randomized studies are available here. The French sarcoma group retrospectively analyzed 62 patients who have been treated with different chemotherapies, 71% with combination therapy, 29% with monotherapy, 21% with anthracycline-based chemotherapies, and the responses are depicted here. 2% complete responses, 19% partial responses, and 60% of the patients had stable disease. The response rate was definitely higher for the anthracycline-based regimens. So if chemotherapy is indicated and a rapid response is needed, then you should go for an anthracycline-based regimen, and pegylated liposomal doxorubicin may be preferred in this young patient population with less cardiac toxicity. Moving to the targeted therapy, it has all started with imatinib. There was the US phase 2 study with 19 patients being treated with 800 milligram imatinib daily with an overall response rate of 16%. This study was followed by the phase 2 study from the French sarcoma group, 35 patients being treated with 400 milligram imatinib daily, overall response rate 11%. And the progression arrest rates after 3, 6, and 12 months were 90, 80, and 70% respectively. The 2-year progression-free survival rate was 55% and the overall survival rate 95%. Within the German interdisciplinary sarcoma group, we also run a study evaluating imatinib in recessed progressive desmoid tumors, and we could clearly demonstrate a sustained progression arrest in this dedicated patient population. And this was published in the European Journal of Cancer in 2017. The next tyrosine kinase inhibitor, which was evaluated in the first large phase 3 randomized study ever performed in desmoid tumors, was sorafenib. And the study clearly could demonstrate an advantage for sorafenib compared to placebo in terms of progression-free survival. The overall response rate was 30% in the sorafenib arm compared to 20% in the placebo arm. The French sarcoma group evaluated pazopanib in progressive desmoid tumor patients in the DESMO-PATS trial, compared to a chemotherapy combination consisting of methotrexate and vinblastine. The primary endpoint of this study was the non-progression rate at 6 months of therapy, which was 84% in the pazopanib arm compared to 45% in the chemotherapy arm. So again, there was a clear benefit in favor of the tyrosine kinase inhibitor pazopanib. The next group of treatment options are the gamma-secretase inhibitor, and the first one, which could demonstrate activity in desmoid tumors, was nirogacestat, which has been evaluated in a small phase 2 study in 17 patients who are depicted here. The responses are shown in this plot, where you can see 5 partial responses and none of the patients demonstrated a progression under treatment with nirogacestat. Nirogacestat was overall well tolerated with hardly any grade 3 or grade 2 adverse events. There were only a couple of grade 1 adverse events. And based on these findings, a phase 3 study was initiated called nirogacestat for adults with desmoid tumors, aggressive fibromatosis, the DeFi trial, which finalized recruitment about 1 year ago in summer 2020, and we are of course eagerly awaiting the results of this trial. This is the design of the nirogacestat trial, a 1-to-1 randomization comparing nirogacestat versus placebo. There is the possibility of a crossover from the placebo arm in case of progression to the open-label nirogacestat arm. The primary endpoint of this study is progression-free survival. And here, the first patient was dosed in May 2019, and the study finalized recruitment in summer 2020. Another gamma-secretase inhibitor currently being tested in desmoid tumor patients is the one which has been developed from Ayala, AL102, which is tested in a kind of seamless combined phase 2, phase 3 study. In the first part, in the part A, the optimal treatment regimen is evaluated, and in the second part, in the part B, in a 2-to-1 randomization, AL102 is being tested versus placebo in 156 patients. This is an efficacy summary of the different studies with the tyrosine kinase inhibitors and the gamma-secretase inhibitors. Here you can see the 4 studies evaluating imatinib. This is the sorafenib study, the Desmopat study with pazopanib, and last but not least, the data from nirogacestat, the gamma-secretase inhibitor. And what you can also see here that only 2 studies, the one from Germany and the one from France, really required a RECIST progressive disease as an inclusion criteria. So in summary, the medical treatment options for desmoid tumors, we did not give any recommendation for the use of anti-hormonal therapies. Chemotherapy may be indicated in rapidly growing and or symptomatic or even life-threatening desmoid tumors. Tyrosine kinase inhibitors such as sorafenib and pazopanib clearly demonstrated clinical activity in randomized settings and move into the focus of interest. Gamma-secretase inhibitors promise to be effective agents, and currently nirogacestat and AL102 are being evaluated in clinical studies. But you have always keep in mind that the majority of the mentioned drugs do not have a formal registration for desmoid tumors and therefore are not available or reimbursed in many European countries. So let me have a look now to our desmoid global consensus and what we summarized and here for the available medical therapies. So due to the lack of comparative studies, we are still not able to propose a definitive sequence of the existing systemic treatment options. Randomized data only exist for sorafenib, pazopanib, and the combination of methotrexate plus vinblastine. So in general, it is reasonable to employ the less toxic therapy initially, followed by more toxic agents in a stepwise fashion. And out of the variety of possible systemic treatment options, one can be chosen, taking into account the level of evidence, the overall response rate, the progression-free survival rate, the ease of administration, and the expected toxicity of the administered drug. And this it can be evaluated in a kind of 5-dimensional model, which is depicted here. And this is the treatment algorithm we developed in our global consensus meeting and publication. So the Desmoid Global Consensus is available in a nice layout form. It is publicly available over the websites of the Desmoid Tumor Research Foundation and Sarcoma Patients Euronet. And it is also available in a scientific publication, which has been published in the European Journal of Cancer at the beginning of 2020. And having said that, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the participants, all the patients and patient advocates, and all the medical experts who contributed to this work within the Desmoid Tumor Working Group. And I would like to say thank you for your attention, for your interest in this disease, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments here. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kasper, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I'd just like to point out, again, as he just explained, there are 2 versions of the global consensus paper. We feel that's one of the most important things that we've provided funding for in recent years as a resource for both patients and treating physicians. There is a patient version and the more scientific, longer version for physicians. They're both available on our website. And Lynn, perhaps you could put in the chat the link to these papers. We just feel it's so important for you to use this resource. You can give it to your doctors. You can, use it however you'd like, but a really, really important resource. And thank you for going into detail about all of that. So I believe you had some questions presented in advance. Dr. Kasper, if you'd like to go ahead with some of those.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jean. And yeah, it's always a pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot. I've been attending this now for, I think, more than 5 years, and it's always a great experience. Yeah, I received a couple of questions beforehand, so let me start by answering these. And the first few questions have to do or deal with let's say, the definition of a desmoid tumor. You probably know that there is also there's always some confusion about that, because in the WHO and also the International Classification of Diseases say that a desmoid tumor is a benign disease. So it's not a cancer per definition. And as you know, of course, especially from the patients and from the patient groups, it is always emphasized that, of course, these tumors grow or can grow locally very aggressively, and to better, let's say, reflect this actual clinical cause of a desmoid tumor, there is an initiative now that a desmoid tumor is or will be better reflected by a certain or by a unique code within this International Classification of Diseases. Maybe, Manish, you would just like to say a few words on that, because I think this is quite important.
Sure. I would just say that currently in the ICD-10 coding system, desmoid tumors are coded under what's a pretty general category that includes a lot of different types of tumors. So DTRF is now in the process of getting a very specific code for desmoid tumors that's still under that same category, but it's now a subcategory that's specific for desmoid tumors. We think this is going to be really important for epidemiology to better categorize these tumors, and then also that code is specific to location. So again, to help kind of with the epidemiology and being able to define these tumors better. If approved, that code will go into effect October 1st of 2022.
Thank you very much. The next question was about are there any lifestyle or dietary factors that can influence a desmoid tumor? So in principle, I have to say no. The only thing is, which might be something worth to discuss, is any kind of trauma. So we do have some data that maybe an injury or even a surgery itself can trigger desmoid tumor growth. So this is something you have to take into account. Next questions deal with the topic of a possible adjuvant therapy. So let's say we have a desmoid that has been operated, has been taken out, or another situation, we have a desmoid tumor that has been treated by a kind of medical therapy, and we have achieved a stabilization, a stable disease. And the question is there any kind of treatment to prevent it from happening again or from growing again? Again, I have to answer this question with no. We do not have any data on any kind of what we call adjuvant treatment. And unfortunately, there are also no tests available which could determine the outcome of any kind of treatment. The next question I received also beforehand, and I think it was also in the Q&A, is about radiotherapy. Yes, I mean, radiotherapy still does have a kind of position in the treatment algorithm. We also mention it here, but it's correct that it's used, let's say, less and less, a bit like surgery. And that has to do with the possible long-term side effects that we are always aware of when treating patients, especially this young patient population, with radiotherapy. Next question I received, which is always a kind of debate, or not a debate really, but it's an interesting question. Is there really a difference in the treatment algorithm or in the treatment strategy for sporadic desmoids or for desmoids that are associated with an FAP? So, and according to the consensus, in principle, there's no difference. So we actually use the same treatments, we use the same kind of treatment algorithm, but what is the difference is that FAP-associated desmoid tumors tend to be more aggressive, and that's also the reason why we usually tend to treat them more aggressively, generally spoken. And the last question I received beforehand has to do with that question comes from UK, so it is a bit more a European problem that has to do with access to treatments. As I also outlined in my presentation, the problem is with a lot of treatments that are possibly active in desmoid tumors, like the tyrosine kinase inhibitors, imatinib, sorafenib, and so on, they all do not have a formal registration for this disease. In Europe, that means that in a lot of countries, you are not even allowed as a doctor to prescribe them for a desmoid tumor, or they are not even reimbursed by the medical authorities. So this, for example, imatinib is not able to be used in Italy or something like that. And that's, by the way, the reason why a lot of my colleagues use pazopanib in some countries, even in Japan, because pazopanib does have a registration for soft tissue sarcomas or for sarcomas, and that's why you can also use it for desmoid tumors. So these were my questions that I received beforehand. So
hey, Dr. Kasper, I'm sorry to say we're out of time here. So we're going to have to move on. But again, if you put questions in the Q&A, we'll try to get them answered after the webinar. Thank you so much.
I will do my best to answer them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to those who submitted questions in advance. We'll move on now to a presentation on cryoablation. We're going to have Dr. Afshin Gangi was not able to be here due to another commitment that he had at a different conference simultaneous with this one. So we're going to play his pre-recorded presentation, and then Dr. Sean Tuttle will be answering Tutton, sorry, will be answering questions. He's also working with Dr. Gangi and will be answering questions. So go ahead, Lynn, with the video.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Afshin Gangi. I'm interventional radiologist in the University Hospital of Strasbourg and King College of London. The subject of my talk today is cryoablation of desmoid tumors. Desmoid tumors or fibromatosis are scar tissue, very hard tissue, which are causing symptoms, pain, and sometimes compression of adjacent organs. As you know, it's classified as a benign tumor, but the recurrence rate is very high and it can cause major symptoms. It could happen in anywhere in the body, as you can see here, and could grow in very, very large sizes if not treated. There is a mass effect, could be very painful. The patient are complaining about pain, functional disability, and aesthetical consequences with the psychological consequences for the patients and their environment. The imaging is quite typical. We need to biopsy them systematically to prove that desmoid tumors, to confirm that's a sporadic form and confirm mutation of those tumors. The incidence is very rare. That's 5 to 6 cases for a million of population. 3% of all soft tissue tumors. The peak of frequency is usually between 30 to 40 years old. We have two groups, as you know, sporadic one, and finally part of familial dermatosis polyposis, which is another category of the tumor. The major tumors we are treating are the sporadic form of desmoid tumors with confirmation of beta-catenin mutation. As you know, the other form, which is the familial form with APC mutation, it's a more difficult tumor to treat with high recurrences, and the prognostic is very different. The diagnostic, usually we have a previous history of trauma, but sometimes you're not finding any history of any trauma in those patients. Means you cannot eliminate this, and you need to biopsy those patients to confirm the diagnostic. The treatment, usually, desmoid tumors can be stable. They can spontaneously decrease in size, and sometimes they're increasing in size. We are interested in tumors which are symptomatic and evolutive, not the other tumors. Means this is what we do. Previously, before 2000, all these patients were going to two categories of treatment, surgery and radiotherapy, or both together. That was the problem, and we know the high recurrences of desmoid tumors after surgery. I will not insist much about medical and surgical treatment because we want to talk more about the percutaneous treatment of this. But as you know, the surgery is now more reserved to the patient which are very symptomatic with compression syndrome. Radiotherapy is an active treatment which is giving good results. But as you know, if the patient is young, we try to avoid radiation therapy in young patients if the other treatments are working. That's why we are, reducing the number of radiotherapy. Medical treatment, very efficient, working very good in many patients. Means, we are now, for the moment, proposing cryoablation only in patients which are not responding to medical treatment or very symptomatic patients or growing tumors. Interventional radiology, we have tried many techniques. We were doing chemical ablation, then we come to thermal ablations and cryo. Cryo seems to be the most promising technique today for desmoid tumors with HIFU. There are the two treatment proposed. Cryoablation consists of freezing the tumors, going below -40 degrees. As you can see, many examples of those tumors. You need to put every 1.5 to 2 centimeters of cryoprobes. The treatment we have done till now were always done usually in very large tumors. Means this is not the best cases, but we have done it in large evolutive tumors, and it works quite good. You will see the result. As you can see, some cases needing more than 15, nearly 18 probes to freeze the tumor. As you can see here, every 1.5 to 2 centimeters, the prop have been positioned to freeze and to destroy the tumor. Visualization of the ice ball is essential. That's why we like cryo, because we can see the ice ball. This is not possible with ultrasound. Ultrasound have a shadow and we cannot see exactly the ice. That's why we need to do it under CT or MRI, not following the ice ball with ultrasound, because you are blind and you cannot see much of this. But with other technique like MRI, you can see very nicely the ice balls in different sagittal axial view. Here you can see a deltoid desmoid tumors, which is very well seen on MR, and you see the ice ball visible on it. Another one on the pectoral muscles, you can see the ice ball precisely at the end. We have sometimes a good surprise, but it is not systematic. This is the immunological effect. This was done at abscopal effect, if you want, but we have seen in a few cases very good surprise like this one. You see we had a large cervical tumors. We have frozen about 80% of the tumors, but when we have controlled the patient, we have 100% necrosis of the tumors happening. Those cases are happening, or sometimes very extended tumors, we have effect on the distal part of the tumor. We have not frozen. This was it. Today, the indication of cryo, just today, before the next prospective study, is biopsy-proven desmoid tumors, growing and symptomatic, painful or not, and not tolerating the treatment and resisting to the conventional treatment. That means this is what we are doing. That's an alternative to radiotherapy and surgery. It means before becoming very aggressive, we go to cryo before going to radiation or surgery. In the major case, in the major part of the cases we are treating today. The technique. It's a long procedures, painful procedures, and we need to be very precise. That's why those patients should be under general anesthesia, so we can work precisely, take our time to make it, and to make it safe, protecting the surrounding organ. It's painful, especially during the few hours after the intervention. During the first 3 days, we have a large edema, which should be treated, and you should be careful with this. You can use ultrasound to position the probes if you want, but not to follow the ice ball. That's very important to know. CT and MRI are mandatory to follow up the cryoablation and to see what we are doing. As you can see here, again, the ice ball seen this time with the CT scan very nicely and very precisely. We are trying to do a complete ablation every time we can. That's important to know. The number of probes depend how large is the tumor. As I told you before, every 1.5 to 2 centimeters, one probe should be positioned. That's the usual architecture of the tumor with probes positioning in the patient. As I said, for large tumors, you can need a lot of probes, which increase the cost of the treatment and make it more aggressive. And you can imagine the volume of tumor is proportional to number of complications, as you can imagine this. Sometimes the tumors has a very strange shape, and we have to take care of it. It means the probe should come in every direction to cover the tumors, and this could happen. That's like this. You see, every probe is coming from another direction to cover completely the tumor. We should be very careful with the surrounding organs. Skin is very near, bone, nerve root, muscles, bowel, pericardium, pelvic organs. It means the anatomical review is essential to protect the adjacent organ, not having major complications with the ice ball. Sure, we are working with small probes, but inside we are creating a very large necrosis. That's important. That we need to protect those organs by hydrodissection, carbodissection, electrostimulation, evoked potential, skin warming, dissection of the skin, all this together to do a safe procedure and to avoid major complications. As you can see, when we are producing an ice ball, when the nerve root is rear, we need to do a hydrodissection with different needle to push the nerve roots away or make a warm bath for the tumor. Another case, you can see very near the sciatic nerve, hydrodissection is done to put the sciatic nerve inside this warm fluid to protect it. During the whole procedures associated with evoked potential, to be sure we are not damaging the nerve root. In the acute phase, after the procedure, we have a huge edema. I'm telling always to my patient, it creates an omelette. We are breaking all the eggs, and we have all the fluid coming out, hyperosmolar, and we have this huge edema, which usually double the size of the tumor. And you have to take care of this after the procedure and tell the patient about this edema and the moving fluid along the body at the few days after. The delayed phase, these hard tumors, which is the desmoid tumors, become softer and softer, take the shape of a silicon ball. That's what we have. And then the shrinkage is very, very slow. That's something you need to know. An example of a very large abdominal wall desmoid tumors, that's a sporadic case. Very voluminous tumors, very painful, and the patient cannot really close the button of his shirt. And that's what we have done. As you can see here, here we are, that's taking contrast tumors, pushing even the abdominal wall in contact with the colon. That's, again, a difficulty, and that's what we have done. CO2 dissection, that's the carbo dissection. The probes positioned every 1.5 centimeter inside, protecting the bowel with carbo dissection, as you can see here. And this done, we are freezing the tumors at the end, freezing completely the whole tumors as if we can. The skin was protected too, as you can see, hydrodissection of the skin to be sure we don't have any frostbite. That's the ice ball at the end. Look at the ice ball, the whole hyperdensity of the tumors. The skin is away, and we have still the carbo dissections a few hours after even the procedure, because we want that the whole ice is gone before we are approaching the colon. Look at this, M1, full necrosis of the tumors. M3, we have a nice shrinkage of the tumors. And finally, 2 years later, we have just a small amount of the tumors and very soft. As I said, the shrinkage is very slow. When we are working on the MR, we don't have an insulated needle really, and we have sometimes small frostbite of the skin, which are scarring very good afterward. As I said, hydrodissection in the cervical case, all these are fluid to protect the carotid and the nerve roots, with excellent result, complete ablation 6 months later. This is very good. The Strasbourg experience at the beginning was, we have done a few patients before beginning our prospective study, and you can see the follow-up was up to 5 years. And as you can, complete ablation only in 3 of the 11 cases, partial ablation 8, but what is essential is improvement of the symptoms in all cases. That was very encouraging. We have 2 cases of recurrence, but asymptomatic. Means if the patient is asymptomatic and the tumor is small, you should not touch it anymore. And that's what we have done. There are a few papers on the literature showing the same thing. Very efficient treatment on the symptoms. We are not obtaining complete ablation. In many cases, as you can see here, we have 39% of no residual tumor, but 95% of the tumors are shrinking and the symptoms are responding to the patient. In other papers, going in the same way, then 80% of tumor reduction and excellent symptoms response. Then we have done the prospective study, the French one, the Cryoablation one, which was including prospectively patient resisting and progressing under conventional treatment. We have included multicentric study with 50 patients, included average age of 40. 96% of the patient had previous treatment, as I said, and as you can see, usually quite very large tumors. Means we have included really very large, desperate tumors inside. And what was impressive again, it was that no progression at 12 months in 86% of the patients. We are not talking about complete ablation, but no progression. Minor complication in 77% of the cases, but major complication in 22%. Means those results are very encouraging. And it led finally that ESMO guidelines included cryoablation in the second line, means when the treatment is not working, the conventional one, we can propose now cryoablations in those guidelines. To conclude now, I think cryoablation and a little bit HIFU at the same time are very promising technique percutaneously to treat desmoid tumors. The current indication, as I said, but we are pushing it to the next prospective study, which will begin in the next months, about including first line cryo comparing the medical treatment, which will include again multicentric study in France, and we will begin this, and we are leading this study, and we will see if we can introduce cryo as a first line. Challenging technique because we have done large tumors, but again, very promising, but it should be done in good hands of people trained, having the exact training and CT and MR in this position to do it. Thank you very much for your attention.
We thank Dr. Gangi for that wonderful presentation. And again, I'll announce that these videos will be available for you to look at as many times as you want at our website. Now I'll introduce Dr. Sean Tutton. He is from the Medical College of Wisconsin. Dr. Tutton, I'll just start with one question. We just heard that it has to be a highly specialized doctor who will administer this. Can you talk about the general availability of the procedure? What kind of physicians are really capable of doing this well? And insurance coverage for the procedure?
Thanks for your question. Cryoablation and other forms of ablation are generally performed by what are called interventional radiologists. I'm an interventional radiologist. We use image guidance. So as you saw in the video, ultrasound, CT, and MRI. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
And so ablation is becoming more widely available. We started using ablation in the treatment of liver tumors and kidney tumors and lung tumors. And it is in the last decade, I would say, that we're starting to use it more in bone and soft tissue tumors like desmoid. And so I can tell you that at many of the major cancer centers around the United States, there are interventional radiologists and physicians that have the expertise to offer cryoablation. One of the interesting things is that not very many people know what an interventional radiologist is, right? A sort of medical oncologist is a very well understood concept, but an interventional radiologist is something that is still, there's an awareness issue. So most large centers do have highly specialized interventional radiologists that are treating cancer patients, are working in multidisciplinary tumor boards, sarcoma teams, as my own situation. And so I think that seeking us out, it can be a little bit of a challenge, but as I've promised, I will make the DTRF, I'll have a list of available physicians that can offer these services around the United States, and Afshin can obviously fill in the blanks in Europe.
And about general insurance coverage, I'm sure it's different from country to country, but.
Correct. So prior to this year, we were having challenges with coverage because there was really only this small retrospective data, and there was no support in the NCCN guidelines. And the NCCN guidelines, for better or for worse, a lot of the payers look at those guidelines to determine whether something is experimental or whether they're going to cover it. In this year, the NCCN guidelines now have language supporting ablation, both cryoablation and HIFU, as an option. And so at least at my own institution, we're having much better success treating patients with cryo and getting insurance coverage.
Okay, Manish, did you want to bring over any other questions from the Q&A?
Yeah, I think Bernd and John have been doing a really good job about answering specific questions by text, but maybe I'll just take a step back. We've gotten a lot of questions about location of desmoid tumors and how that affects treatment options or prognosis. So maybe this is a question for Bernd or Sean, but Bernd has mentioned that abdominal tumors seem to be have a better prognosis. Is that because there's something about the biology of an abdominal tumor, or is it that it's more superficial and it's easier to monitor that gives it a better prognosis? Or do we not know?
I'll yield to Bernd and then I can follow up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the most important point is that location is important for the kind of treatment we can do, and so that if you look at our treatment algorithm in the consensus statement, you can see that we have different treatments for the different locations, and of course, the most difficult ones are, of course, let's say in the head and neck area, where you have a lot of nerves, a lot of issues that may occur here than when you do surgery or when you do other kind of therapies, and that's maybe the most important thing. But yes, we do have different prognosis for the different locations of desmoid tumors.
Yeah, I would just generally say that We heard yesterday that people are being treated with intra-abdominal tumors with cryoablation. It is more challenging to treat those tumors because the bowel and other structures are quite close. The extra-abdominal tumors are more amenable to cryoablation and other forms of ablation. And so we've treated patients with neck tumors, as Dr. Gangi showed, who have failed systemic therapies and other treatments. We've treated limb tumors, abdominal wall tumors, flank tumors, or in and around the back. And one of the attendees asked a specific question, which I think I should address. In all of these retrospective series, we've seen that there can be some nerve injuries. And it is important that we have the conversation with the patient about the potential for those nerve injuries and whether they're going to happen and whether they could be recoverable. Most of the time with cryoablation, the nerve injuries will recover over time, but that's not always the case. And that becomes one of the major limitations is the nerve that would potentially be injured a very important nerve so that there'd be a significant reduction in function. That's always the big question that we have in trying to decide where to put cryoablation. Is it second line? Is it first line? And is it safe to offer it based on the proximity to a nerve?
Great. I think that's a great segue to maybe the next big topic, which I think we've gotten a lot of questions about injuries and trauma. And one of the specific questions was, can cryoablation be considered a trauma that would then cause more desmoids to happen in that area?
Yeah, I think we don't know. I think that's the fair answer. What is nice and unique about cryo is, as you saw in the video, we're putting fairly small needles in. We're not making an incision. We're not moving muscles. We're not causing sort of major trauma, but we are placing these needles into the body, going through the skin and into the tissues. And so the honest answer is we don't know. But in my experience, and I think in Afshin's experience, we have not seen rapid progression in any of the patients who have been treated with cryo. I think we can say that if you look at all of the data.
Okay. And then related to that kind of question, so if a patient has a desmoid tumor, let's say in the abdomen, should they be avoiding all surgeries? Like if they need a surgery on their arm or something, are they at higher risk for desmoid due to all surgeries or just in surgeries near their desmoid? Either Bernd or Sean or Dr. Gangi if he's on as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think we talk about field defects, right? So where the desmoid has occurred, we talk about the area in that region as there's a field defect that somehow is predisposing to desmoids. But it's an excellent question. I don't think we know the absolute answer that if you have an intra-abdominal desmoid, are you more likely to develop something out on the arm or something like that? Bernd, maybe you can add to that.
No, I mean, you explained it excellently. So, I mean, the question is, there is often obviously a defect in any locate, but the thing is what we don't know, why does the desmoid occur in this location then? And but of course you cannot say generally that you cannot do any surgery then, because if you need a surgery for any kind of other disease or whatever, you have to go for that surgery, no question. So yeah, but we do not recommend too many surgeries for desmoids. That's another thing.
I think another question that's come up related to that is kind of the ordering of these treatments. I think, Bernd, you mentioned active surveillance is always first line if we want to try to do first. But then how do you know if cryoablation is the next step, or is medical treatment the next step, or is surgery the next step?
I mean, that's a very easy answer. We don't know. And I mean, or we can't say at the moment. But what I would say is that with the more and more data coming up for cryoablation, this is definitely something which we will discuss maybe in our next consensus meeting, and because cryoablation seems to have more and more a kind of position in the treatment algorithm. And that's something to discuss if we have more and more data on that, certainly.
And then maybe, Sean, this is a specific question to you, but it was, so would cryoablation ever be considered a first-line treatment for maybe small desmoids? And when I say first-line, I mean after active surveillance, maybe on progression, the first treatment choice.
Yeah, thanks for that qualification. So, we had a small retrospective series that we published. One of our residents, Kayla Redifer, did a wonderful job. And it reflects what has changed at our own institution, which is we realized that surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy were really not working well for these young patients. And so in the majority of our patients, we actually used cryoablation as a first-line treatment. And we had, as I recall, 85% disease control. And so I think to bundle the last question and this question, it really does require a group of people that are passionate and focused on desmoid tumors: surgeons, medical oncologists, radiation oncologists, interventional radiologists, a whole team to sort of consider, along with the patient, what's the best treatment, given that we really don't have that perfect answer yet. So that's how we function. And so whenever, in those patients that we treated, it was never my decision alone with the patient. It was always this consensus group of people saying, yeah, that really does make sense. And that's better than this. It's the least invasive thing that we can offer, which is how I think about it. The least offensive, least invasive thing that we could offer.
And then I think we have time for just one last question. Dr. Gangi in his video mentioned that cryoablation is really useful for smaller tumors. Is cryoablation ever used in larger tumors with the intent of slowing growth and not necessarily eliminating the tumor?
Yeah, so the ideal tumor that's relatively easy to treat is one that's maybe 5 or 6 centimeters or less. Those actually are pretty easily treated by cryo. When they start to get to be above, 8, 9, 10, 15 centimeters, it gets to be a big undertaking for anybody, right? So it's just a big lesion with a lot of cells. We tend to break those up into staged procedures where we'll treat part of the tumor and then come back at maybe in 4 to 6 weeks and treat the next part of the tumor, just so that, again, we're being more gentle on the patient. But it definitely can be done. I have treated very large tumors in all parts of the body, as has Dr. Gangi. So definitely possible.
Dr. Tutton, I'll just ask one final question. We saw that there can be multiple treatments required for cryo. In other words,
Right.
it might shrink, grow again, shrink, grow again. How common is recurrence, and what is the average number of treatments required?
Well, I think that we, in looking at all the data, we can sort of generally say that the recurrence rate is similar to surgery. So it can be up to, let's say, 50%. So it's not a perfect treatment. We definitely have those patients where it goes away altogether in one treatment and it never comes back. So that's the more optimistic view of this. On average, in our series, we ended up treating patients almost 2 times. So if you looked at every patient and you sort of averaged out that number, it was 1 to 2 times. And again, sometimes that's because we're trying to break up the treatments to be more and a little bit more to have the patient maintain function and to have a better experience with the treatment rather than trying to be overly aggressive and get everything in the first go.
Okay. Thank you so much. What an enlightening
My pleasure.
video and answering session. Thank you so much. We'll now move on to discussion of a gamma-secretase inhibitor. You heard from Dr. Kasper's presentation that we've seen success with nirogacestat, which is in current phase 3 trial, but it is closed to new patients. I'll just tell the attendees that you'll learn tomorrow more about how these drugs, after a trial is closed or outside of a trial, can possibly be obtained through compassionate use, but that's a subject for tomorrow. And now we have another gamma-secretase inhibitor on the horizon, developed by Ayala Pharmaceuticals, and we'll turn the time over to Dr. Gary Gordon and Jason Kaplan for their video and questions after.
Hi, and welcome to our session. Thank you for inviting us and for giving us the opportunity to share with you Ayala and AL102 Desmoid program. We are glad to be here today, and I'm happy to introduce to you my team. Dr. Gary Gordon, our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jason Kaplan, our Medical Director, and Dana Gelbaum, our Chief Business Officer. The company, founded in 2017, so we are a young company, is a clinical stage oncology company dedicated to developing and commercializing small molecule therapeutics for patients suffering from rare tumors and aggressive cancers. The company's current portfolio of product candidates, AL101 and AL102, target the aberrant activation of Notch pathway with gamma-secretase inhibitors. My incredible team is located in the US and in Israel. At Ayala, we understand the needs of patients, like many people listening today and people like Ashley and Kate, who are living with desmoid tumors. This can be an especially challenging journey because, as we all know, desmoid tumors are rare, debilitating, and often disfiguring class of soft tissue tumors for which there are currently no approved therapies. We believe our lead investigational product, AL102, has the potential to become a new treatment option for desmoid tumors because of its ability to inhibit Notch pathway activation, which we will talk more about during today's presentation. Both of our product candidates are potent selective gamma-secretase inhibitors, or as we call them, GSIs, that are being studied across several rare tumors and aggressive cancers, including desmoid, adenoid cystic carcinoma, triple-negative breast cancer, and multiple myeloma. And we are making good progress. Ayala is currently conducting a phase 2-3 clinical trial of AL102 for the treatment of progressing desmoid tumors. We expect to report interim data from the initial Part A of the study in mid-2022, with Part B commencing thereafter. Dr. Gary Gordon will now provide an overview of AL102 mechanism of action, some results from phase 1 studies with our GSIs, and overview of the ringside study design.
Hi, I'm Gary Gordon. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Ayala, and I am very happy to be here today to talk to you about our program with AL102 and desmoid tumors and the ringside study. So as many as you know, the Notch pathway is an important pathway in the development of the fetus and the embryo during pregnancies. It plays a really critical role there for cell division and the normal development of the fetus. This is shown in an illustration on the left-hand side of the slide, where you see the Notch pathway. In blue, you can see the ligand or the protein that normally signals the Notch receptors to be active. And you can see a little pair of scissors here in the membrane that play a critical role in releasing the signaling message of the Notch pathway. During cancer and other disease states, the receptor can become independent of that signal from the other cell, that blue triggering protein, and then abnormally signal the nucleus to start making additional proteins. And this can, in adults, play a very critical role in the development of tumors, not only in their ability to grow, their ability to spread, their ability to get blood vessels, and their ability to resist treatment with certain types of chemotherapies. On the far right-hand side of the slide is an illustration that shows what our drug does. Our drug, AL102, is illustrated here as the white ball with spikes on it. And again, the gamma-secretase enzyme is shown as a pair of scissors. And you can see, obviously, that the drug is preventing the scissors from closing and therefore from triggering the signaling of the Notch pathway by preventing that cutting of the normal Notch receptor. The next slide shows you a little bit of information that we've gathered over the years from our experience with both AL101 and AL102. AL101 and 102 are both gamma-secretase inhibitors. The primary difference is AL102 is the drug that we'll be studying in the ringside study, and it is an oral drug as opposed to an IV drug. And what you can see in this slide is that we have had some experience both as part of the formal studies and as part of expanded access studies with both of these drugs being able to achieve tumor shrinkages in patients. So in AL102 in the phase 1 program, there was a patient who had a nearly 20% shrinkage on AL102, and there were additional patients in the AL1 experience consistent with other gamma-secretase inhibitors that these agents can cause dramatic tumor shrinkage. And this is shown in the scans on the right-hand side of the slide, where you can see that the patient has a large intra-abdominal desmoid tumor that with treatment shrinks very, very dramatically.
Hi, my name is Jason Kaplan. I'm one of the medical directors here at Ayala, and I'm here to discuss the Ringside study with you all. Ringside is the name of our phase 2, phase 3 clinical trial involving our drug AL102, which is a gamma-secretase inhibitor. The study is divided into two parts, part A and part B. Part A will involve 36 patients, and the study does require that patients have desmoid tumors that are in the process of what we call progressing. And what we mean by progressing, as the protocol is written now, is patients have to have what we call a RECIST-defined progression, meaning 20% or greater growth in their tumor within a 12-month period before going on the study. So everyone in part A will get the study drug, one of 3 different doses. Once that part is completed, we'll decide which of the 3 dosing regimens is best to move forward with. And everyone who's on part A, who's taking the drug still, who is benefiting from it and tolerating it well, at the time that we finish part A, everyone will have the opportunity to roll over to this open label extension. So patients will be able to stay on drug even when part A completes. So in part B, which you can see on the right side of the screen, additional patients will get randomized to AL102, the study drug, or to placebo. Most patients will be randomized to AL102, and about a third of all the patients in part B will be randomized to placebo. And anyone who's getting placebo, who has their desmoid tumor get worse, if you will, or progress on the study, they'll have the opportunity to switch over to AL102, to the study drug. So virtually everyone in part B will be able to get the study drug. We're going to be looking at safety. We're looking at how well the drug works, which we call efficacy, meaning does it shrink? Does pain get better? And we're also interested in looking at quality of life as measured by what we call patient-reported outcome tools, or PRO tools. And we have several of these PRO tools built into the study, one of which is a tool called the Goddess PRO tool, and that was actually developed at Memorial Sloan Kettering in conjunction with the DTRF. So we're looking at all these things, and ultimately, the primary goal is to determine whether the study drug AL102 is better than placebo. And that's really the summary of the study in a nutshell. I also will mention in part B, it does involve enrollment of patients who are 12 years and older, whereas part A is for patients who are 18 years and older. Certainly, if you have any questions about the study, feel free to contact us. Our contact information will be listed at the end of this presentation. So here's a list of all the countries where the study will be open. As of now, you can see under part A, you can see the list of countries that we're opening in. And then at the bottom of the list, you can see additional countries that we're looking into. Actually, we've decided to move forward with those countries as well. There are additional countries that are not listed here that we're also considering, even for part A. So then in part B, which will open later on, all of these countries that you see here for part A will be involved with part B. Additionally, we'll have other countries for part B as well.
Hi, I'm Dana Gelbaum, and I'm leading the patient advocacy work at Ayala. At Ayala, we strongly believe that the patient voice matters. Since I started my career in drug development, one constant has been focusing on the needs of patients. At Ayala, this commitment informs our work every day, from how we develop the clinical trial protocol to putting programs in place to ensure all patients have access to new treatment options. Fortunately, the FDA is also taking steps to better understand the patient experience by providing more opportunities for patients to share their perspectives. I hope this answers some of your questions about Ayala work in desmoid tumors and on our commitment to develop targeted therapies for people living with rare and aggressive diseases.
We want to thank you all today for being here. We really appreciate your time. If you have any questions or concerns about the protocol, feel free to reach out to us anytime. Here's our information. Please reach out to Gary or myself. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Doctors Gordon and Jason, you're both here, Dr. Kaplan, here to answer questions. I'd like to just start with one question that we think has come up a lot. When you say if you do start with the placebo and you have progression of the tumor, at what level does that progression need to be for you to switch over to the actual drug?
Yeah, so I'll take that. So thanks for the questions and thanks for having us here. So during Part B, the part in which patients could potentially receive placebo as opposed to AL102, if there's evidence of progression as defined by the RECIST definition of progression, which is 20% growth or greater, that would prompt us to unblind. And if we learn that the patient had been receiving placebo, then that patient will have the opportunity to switch over or cross over, I should say, to AL102. So yes, it is simply stated. It's 20% or higher growth.
Can you just define?
I mean, I think it's important to add that progression is a key endpoint of the study, and patients would need to progress as defined in the protocol in order to switch over. And we have to do that to protect the validity of the study, and we will work with the CRO that we work with to have a way to enable that.
Can you just define in lay terms the meaning of RECIST? It's an acronym.
Right.
So it's very. Go ahead, Jason.
So it is an acronym. It's well established in the world of oncology research, clinical research, and basically it is a system in which radiologists measure the size of the tumor. They look at the diameter of the tumor, and when it involves multiple different tumors in the same patient, we add them all up, the diameters of each of those lesions up, and we can look at the percentage change from baseline to later on. And, in the case of desmoid tumor, in many cases, there's one tumor as opposed to multiple, but sometimes there are multiple tumors. But even with just one single tumor, and, it's basically if that the dimension, the diameter of the tumor is increasing from baseline by 20% or greater, that is progression. And that's what I mean by RECIST, the RECIST definition of it. And that's pretty well accepted in the world of solid tumor oncology. We know that desmoid tumors don't always behave exactly like every other cancer out there. We realize that.
And critically, it's the endpoint that the FDA, at least up until now, has asked for.
Right. Manish, did you see any other questions to field here?
Yeah, there were a couple of questions that came up earlier that I think are relevant here. There was one question about patient-reported outcomes, and you mentioned using the GODDESS PRO in this study. And specifically, they were asking about real-time details on the results of those PROs. So I guess to broaden the question, what are your plans to release results specifically on the PROs or otherwise for the study?
So I'll jump in and take this one and say, this is meant to be a registration study. So those results will be reported in a way that's consistent with us to allow us to use them for registration. So we can't prematurely break the blind in a study that we're going to use for registration. As we learn the first part of the study, we will likely be able to report those.
Could you please define registration in lay terms for us all?
Sure. Registration in lay terms, and apologize for using jargon, means being able to take the results to the FDA or other regulatory agencies and have them review those results and approve the drug then for use. And again, the goal is to ultimately get the drug approved so that the most patients can benefit from the use of the drug.
Thank you.
And I think we're all probably more aware of the registration process lately because of all the discussion of vaccines than we might otherwise be.
Any other questions that came through, Manish?
Yeah, and then I had another question related to genetics or mutation status. I believe in your study there's a biopsy at the beginning. And the question was really around how useful is a genetics test? Does it allow us to predict which treatment would be useful? Does it allow us to predict how useful a treatment will be? So I didn't know if you had any comments on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Simple answer is we don't know yet. We're very interested in learning that. So, by collecting that information and then later on looking back at all the data together and seeing if there's a correlation between the genetic status and the patient and how well the patient did or how well the tumor responded is of great interest. Absolutely.
Great. I think that's a great point about clinical trials. While the primary focus is to, progression-free survival, cure the tumor, there's all these other endpoints that could be really useful in it. And biopsies and mutational status is one. I think we also talked about imaging and whether or not imaging could help us define a better way of monitoring these tumors. So I didn't know if you wanted to comment on the imaging aspect as well.
Well, we are, of course, we're relying on imaging to determine, the primary endpoint, which is progression-free survival. So imaging is an essential part of the study. We're, as we said, we're looking at the RECIST criteria for response. But we're also looking at other specific MRI changes, including tumor volume and signaling changes on the MRI that are a little more exploratory at this point. And so I think that's an important part of the study. Even it's an exploratory endpoint, but it's an important part of the study. Actually, it's a secondary endpoint for part A, the tumor volume aspect of it. But the other features that I mentioned are a little more exploratory. But as many of us know, it's of great interest to see if we can come up with a way, an imaging modality to assess how these tumors are responding to therapy, other than the more conventional RECIST way of doing things.
Great.
Okay,
And just one final quick question, and then we'll move on. I think it got answered by text, so we're fine. So Jeannie, if you want to move on, since we're a minute behind.
I'm going to ask for one more lay definition, please. The use of the term progression-free survival does not fit well to me with desmoid tumors because very few people actually die from desmoid tumors. So what does that tumor mean in the terms of desmoid tumors being studied and reaching that endpoint?
Right. Yeah. And again, I apologize for the jargon as well. So progression. So when we use the term survival, progression-free survival, that generally the term survival indicates, mortality and if someone's alive or not. But what we really mean when we say survival is progression-free survival is we mean what is the status of how long can someone be without having their tumor grow? And that's what we mean. It's not really specifically addressing being alive or not. It's how long someone can be without that tumor getting worse. That's what we mean by progression-free survival, or PFS for short. And again, I apologize for the jargon, but and that's why we have these conferences, so we can talk about things.
Yeah, thank you so much. And
so the last question did come back just real fast. Do we have an estimate on when part 2 might open? There was a question that said their doctor has been saying 6 months for a while. And I know it's challenging to really pin down a date, especially on these big trials, but.
Yeah, that is a good question. I know we don't have a crystal ball, of course, but it could be, 6 months is reasonable. We don't, no one knows yet, just because it all depends on but 6 months sounds reasonable. It could be more, it could be less, but I think that's a nice ballpark figure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both very much. It was very helpful. Love the video and all the answers to the question.
Yes, thank you so much. And we're so excited that this is going to be available in so many countries. So please, again, you can watch the presentation again at your leisure to the patients here and physicians to get that information and send your question to these two presenters here. I just want to make a few announcements before our last session here. Please remember to join RFA live virtual challenge ceremony tomorrow. That takes place at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And we had such an amazing presentation last year. Lynn and her team do an amazing job. It's going to be so exciting to learn how we reached our goal, our fundraising goal, and what everybody has done to help with fundraising this year. These events are all taking place as part of Desmoid Tumor Awareness Month, which is now every September. Also, we're hosting a Facebook and Instagram live broadcast that you're all welcome to attend. It's one of the major questions that comes up for patients is why do we use the term cancer or not use the term cancer? The term benign, the meaning, what we call a desmoid tumor, and the impact of a name and how it's categorized. And I know that question was raised a little bit earlier in this meeting. So that's going to be with Dr. Pollack from Ohio State Cancer Center on Wednesday at 4:30 Eastern. So be sure to either be on Instagram or Facebook at that time to participate in that really important live discussion that I think is going to be of interest to everybody. You can also share your stories during Awareness Month. Still, check out more information at our website, dtrf.org/awareness. And also, you're going to be receiving a survey after this meeting. We'd like to ask you to please answer the survey. You help us become better by giving us your feedback. It'll just be a survey about this meeting. And say the date for next year, physicians and patients and caregivers. Our next year, 2022 meetings will be September 23rd and 25th. You'll hear more about it, but please save the dates on your calendar. And I did misspeak that our discussion about compassionate use was going to be tomorrow. With all of these meetings, these hours are turning into days for me. The compassionate use and other discussions will be today at 1 Eastern, correct?
1:30 p.m. Eastern.
30 p.m. Eastern. And again, I misspoke in the chat. It's at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, but we will be opening the webinar at 1 p.m. and so you can enter at any time. So we're so excited to have as our final presenter a discussion about an international pregnancy study. This is an area that we really need to explore, desmoids and pregnancy. And we turn the time over to Dr. Marianna Coppola of the Desmoid Foundation of Italy and Dr. Chandrajit Raut of the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute for a presentation about the pregnancy study that is ongoing now.
Hi, my name is Marianna Coppola and I'm the Manager Director of the Desmoid Foundation Italy. It's a pleasure for me being here today to speak about desmoid tumor, pregnancy and fertility. A few months ago, we started to collaborate for a new study. This new study is divided into sections. The first one is about woman and pregnancy, and we want to investigate about the behavior of the desmoid tumor during the pregnancy. And the second one is about the psychological effect caused by the diagnosis of desmoid tumor on woman choices during their fertile age. How do we interpret our involvement in these studies? We are actively collaborating with the doctor and with other patient advocates from all over the world. We are collaborating from USA, Italy, France, and Canada. The previous study about desmoid tumor in pregnancy is from 2014, and some of the authors are the same that are making the new one. This old study involved 92 women, and it wanted to investigate about the relationship between desmoid tumor and pregnancy. The conclusion on this study was that the progression risk for the desmoid tumor during the pregnancy is high, but it can be managed, and so it's always advised just to speak with your doctor before starting a pregnancy. But there is no increase of obstetric risk, also if you are diagnosed with desmoid tumor. So there is no contraindication about having a pregnancy if you are diagnosed with this disease. You can download the full paper of this article from our website. The new study that started a few months ago involved 5 different university centers and international hospitals, and it involves the most important doctors that are specialized in desmoid tumor and that you can find in all the most important scientific literature about this disease. So it's involved the institute from Milan, from Padua, from Paris, Boston, and Toronto. The objective of this new study is to investigate about the effect on of pregnancy on the desmoid progression and the effect of the desmoid on the pregnancy outcome. So we want to enroll women that are diagnosed with a desmoid tumor before or during their pregnancy. How do we make the enrollment? The enrollment can be made directly from one of the university center and hospital that I mentioned before, or it can be made through the Patient Advocate Association, or you can find online on social media or on our website information about the enrollment for the patient. Our website is available right now in Italian, in English, and in Portuguese. We started to enroll a patient a few months ago, as I said. Actually, we have no deadline, but this will depend on the number of the women that will be enrolled and the process of the scouting and the recruiting. Related to the main study, there is an ancillary study, and that's the first time that we want to investigate about the psychological effect of the diagnosis of desmoid tumor when a woman during her fertile age received this diagnosis. So how this change her fears and her feelings about the will of having a pregnancy. And that's the first time that we want to investigate about the quality of life of women that receive this diagnosis. And this is really important because the desmoid tumor has really an high incidence in young women. As I said, the Patient Advocate Association have an active role. There are 4 patient advocate associations that are related that are related with the hospital that I mentioned before. So there is the Desmoid Foundation from Italy, DTRF from USA, SOS Desmoid from France, and the Desmoid Foundation Canada. But thanks to internet and thanks to our technology, now we want to reach all the world. So we are already actively collaborating with the Desmoid UK and Desmoid Brazil, also to enroll the women from these 2 countries. And that's what will make this study really important, the collaboration from all over the world. But the technologies, as I said, it will help us to reach a high number of women from all over the world. But this also brings us a problem because we have to protect the privacy of our patient that participate in this study. And how are we doing this? We guarantee the anonymity of this study. The questionnaire are processed full anonymously, and every name is associated with an identification code. The data will be processed not individually, but aggregated, and we will use all the technical and organizational security measures to protect the data of the patient that are enrolled in this study. That's why after filling the survey, all the patients must sign a privacy form, first of all, to verify and validate their identity, and then we will guarantee the anonymity. So I think that you already saw maybe online some posts about this study, because as I said, we started a few months ago. If you're a woman that had the diagnosis of desmoid during or before your pregnancy, please just contact one of the doctor from the research center that I mentioned before, or one of your patient advocate association in your country, just to have information about how to be enrolled in this study. You can participate directly also from our website, desmoidfoundation.org, that, as I said, is available in 3 languages, that is Italian, English, and Portuguese right now. The patient advocates are there just to support you and to give you all the information that you need to participate in this study. For what I said about the ancillary study, all the women that received the diagnosis of desmoid during their fertile age can participate in this study, and it's really important that we reach a high number for this, because so we can have a good view of how this diagnosis change the young woman life. And so also the ancillary study is made just with a survey of a few questions, and this is entirely managed by our website. So it's just that you have to go on our website, desmoidfoundation.org, and you have to fill that survey, and it will be totally anonymous. I'm saying it once again. What are the objectives of the Desmoid Foundation in Italy and all the other patient advocate association? We are actually scouting and recruiting for both studies, and we made on our website some pages where you can find all the info about these studies, and you can be enrolled directly by it, just filling the survey. For the main study that is about desmoid tumor and pregnancy, after filling the survey, you will be contacted by one of the patient advocate, and there are a few questions that they will make to you. For the fertile study, as I said, it's entirely managed online. All the women from all over the world can participate to these studies, to the study that is about desmoid tumor and fertility. All the women that received a diagnosis of desmoid before or during their pregnancy can participate also to the study that is about desmoid tumor and pregnancy. If you are eligible, after you will be contacted from a patient advocate from your association or from one of the doctors that is working in this study. It's not necessary to visit the hospital. It's totally managed through our website. Anyways, totally managed online and by phone. So please, if you are eligible, just participate in this study, because this can make a difference for the future. Before we are leaving, I want to thank you all the patient advocate association that are working with us. the DTRF, that remains the world reference point for the desmoid tumor, the SOS desmoid from France, Desmoid UK from UK, Desmoid Brazil, Desmoid Foundation Canada, and Spain. We are really proud to work with you, and we are really proud of the amazing work that we are making together to enroll the highest number of patients that are eligible for this study. And thanks also to all the doctors that are involved in this study. Thank you for your commitment and your collaboration, because we really think that with this working together can make a difference from the future young woman that will receive a diagnosis of desmoid. We can really help them to face the difficulties of this diagnosis. And before we're leaving, thank you to Marlene and Lynn for organizing this amazing meeting. And we really think that together we are stronger. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for that presentation. Dr. Raut, did you want to say anything before questions, or do you just want to proceed with questions?
Yeah, sure, I think we can proceed with questions. Sorry, I have to keep my camera off. I'm stuck in traffic coming back from a meeting, so I apologize for that. But yes, I think why don't we just turn it over to questions so we can get to those.
If I could just clarify, DTRF will be a site for this study, but this study does not take place on a site like a clinical trial might or something. It is done virtually. So all you have to do, like Marianna said in the presentation, is to, and we'll send you more information about how to participate through DTRF, but you just fill out a form and then you'll have about an hour of questions asked where your answers will be taken, and all be done remotely. So again, as Marianna emphasized, it's so important that we study this area. This disease is truly, so many young women have desmoid tumors, young women of childbearing age, and the more information that we can get relating to the impact on your fertile years and the impact on pregnancy, decisions to become pregnant, results after you do with a desmoid, et cetera, et cetera. These are the areas that will be covered and that are so important to our research. So Manish, did you have questions for Dr. Raut?
Yeah, Chan, a couple of questions came through related to desmoid tumors are often diagnosed during pregnancy or on a C-section scar. Does that mean that for women who are diagnosed during a pregnancy, they should not get pregnant again for fear of growth of their desmoid tumor?
Right. So that's a common piece of advice that women have been given in the past. We don't have any evidence to suggest that there's a lot of credence behind that. There's a couple of issues. One is if the woman decides after delivery to not treat the desmoid, meaning not remove the desmoid, the desmoid may go away or shrink, and that's perfectly fine. If they want to have another child, the counseling that I give them is that desmoid will probably grow. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't get pregnant, and also we don't know for certain if you should have the desmoid taken out. We just don't necessarily know how to predict the growth rate. So it's possible that the desmoid could grow slowly, or it's possible it could go quickly. So I have a long discussion with each woman who presents in that situation about these are the options. We don't have a lot of great data. Hopefully this new study will shed more light on this. But we can't tell you for certain you shouldn't have a pregnancy. I think that's the wrong thing to do. We just don't know how this is going to play out. Now, if the desmoid's removed, then I see really no contraindication to getting pregnant. The recurrence rate seems to be a little bit lower for pregnancy-associated desmoids than in terms of after surgery, than for, say, desmoids arising in the context of FAP or trauma or other circumstances.
Great, thank you. And then another related question, I think this will probably be our last question since we're a little bit over time. But if a person already has a diagnosis of a desmoid tumor, should they avoid C-sections? I know oftentimes it's impossible. Sometimes it's just mandatory that you get a C-section, but if given the option, should they be avoiding C-sections?
Great question. We don't have any data on that. Again, I hope we can gain some information on that from this survey. I have a few patients who have desmoids arising in a C-section scar, but they did not have a diagnosis of desmoid fibromatosis before they had their C-section. So we don't have good data.
Great. And I think that also answered another question, which is that this study will be investigating the idea of cesarean section trauma and desmoid tumors.
Correct.
Great, thank you. And I think that probably covers most of the questions that we've had. Any questions that we didn't get to, as Jeannie mentioned, we'll try to send those out to our expert doctors and try to get answers via email.
Can we just take one more? Can we take one more question, Manish, in the Q&A?
Sure. Are you the last question that just came in?
Yes.
Yes. So the question that just came in is, are there any interventions that can be used while pregnant, or are they all too toxic? That's a great question. Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah, great question. At this point, I think that so we just don't know the impact of, and you know, I would also defer to our medical oncologist on this as well, but we don't know the impact of a lot of these newer drugs on a growing fetus. They haven't been tested necessarily in pregnant women. So I think as long as the desmoid is not symptomatic, trying to minimize an intervention that might put the pregnancy at risk.
Great. Did any of our medical colleagues on the line want to comment on that as well? Or perhaps Jason or Gary, how do we study something like that in a trial?
So I think in the context of a trial, you know, we would probably say that if someone becomes pregnant on the trial, they should stop the drug, given the fact that at least for some of these newer drugs, we don't really have any information to inform that. There is some experience in the oncology literature that I'm aware of, for instance, in treating women with breast cancer who are pregnant, and which agents can be used when and with what degree of safety. But it has been a while since I've looked at that.
Dr. Raut, thank you. Dr. Raut, could you please explain again how the pregnancy study, which is done remotely, wherever you are in the world, it only applies in certain languages. Do you have to be in any certain country to participate, or can you participate from anywhere?
Yes. So I think that what we haven't anticipated is the amount of enthusiasm in the study. So right now, the consent, so that to participate in the consent in the study, you have to sign a consent. The consents are currently available in English, French, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese. Yesterday at the research workshop, one of the investigators from Japan offered to translate into Japanese as well. So those are going to be the languages that we have available. But there's no limitation on where you are in terms of being able to participate. The important thing, of course, is that each individual's data are gathered only once, so we don't duplicate information and have error in numbers.
Okay, so if you were living in the United States, you can participate through DTRF, but if you speak English and you live in some other country, you could still participate through DTRF or through the UK or whatever. You just register online and people will be diverted to the correct language, right?
Correct. And again, when we designed the study, we weren't quite sure how much enthusiasm there would be outside of the participating countries. Obviously there is, and we wanted to gather as much information as possible. Our original hope was that if your country is participating, that you would go through either the institution or the advocacy group in your country. That's obviously only applies to the few participating countries, but for people outside of those countries, participating through any site would be fine.
Okay, thank you so much, and we'll be sending out more information via DTRF about this study.
And Chan, we have we should just get one more question in real quick. We have a very active chat here.
Okay.
Chan, can you, is there any evidence that breastfeeding might influence the growth rate of a tumor?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, actually, and we have no data on that. None at all.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we're 45 minutes to our next webinar, correct, Lynn? 45 minutes, which will be 1:30 Eastern. Please sign in a little early so you don't run into any tech problems or have time to get signed in. We're going to have very interesting presentations again on our webinar number 2, and these will be actually live, so it'll be a little different from this webinar. But we look forward to seeing you all in 45 minutes. Signing off for now. Take a good break.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you to our panelists.
Thank you,
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Take care.
Bye-bye.